Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason Rice, and I'm the National Director of Development here at the Lustgarten Foundation. And I would like to welcome here today, and it's an effort to bring those of you watching, our supporters, our fundraisers, our donors, some updated information on pancreatic cancer research in the era of COVID-19. Now, typically, some of our esteemed partners like Northwell Health would have had the opportunity to provide more in-person updates at the walks themselves. As a matter of fact, Northwell continues to be our premier hospital partner for the New York City, Westchester, Staten Island, and Long Island walks. Now, unfortunately, as many of you know, these events all had to go virtual this year, including our Long Island walk, which is set to still take place on Sunday, October 4th virtually, when we'll be commemorating our 20th anniversary. As an aside, for those of you who are watching who are interested in joining us on Sunday, October 4th by raising funds and awareness for pancreatic cancer research and participating in your own neighborhoods, more information can be found on our website, lustgarten.org/Long Island Walk. So through these Zoom conversations, we are hoping to provide everyone some opportunities to hear from local experts in the field of pancreatic cancer research, only virtually. So I'm very fortunate to have two such experts here with me today to sort through some of the questions you may have about pancreatic cancer care and research. So from Northwell Health, I'd like to welcome Dr. Matthew Weiss. He is the Director of Surgical Oncology at the Cancer Institute in Northwell Health, and also the Deputy Physician-in-Chief at the Cancer Institute in Northwell Health. And also with me today, my colleague, Dr. Andy Rakeman, he is the Vice President of the Research at the Lustgarten Foundation. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for joining us here to talk a little bit about pancreatic cancer and care and research during these trying times. Dr. Weiss, I wanted to start with you. Northwell Health is New York State's largest healthcare provider and private employer with 23 hospitals, nearly 800 outpatient facilities, and more than 14,200 affiliated physicians. For those who are watching who aren't familiar with Northwell Health, they also, Northwell Health Cancer Institute helps patients throughout the greater New York City area survive and thrive both during and after cancer care. And just as early as the summer of 2019, Northwell Health launched its new Pancreatic Cancer Center on Long Island with treatments being provided at other locations as well too. So with that, let's start there and talking a little bit about Northwell's pancreatic cancer program and specifically your role at the center.
Sure. Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you, Andy. And I'm really excited to be here today. I want to thank the Lustgarten Foundation. Working with the Lustgarten Foundation combined with the Northwell Health Cancer Institute has been one of the most rewarding experiences I think I've had in my career. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you to everyone that's tuning in. I hope you find this session helpful. I personally am missing the walk. I usually bring my kids on the walk, in particular the ones on Long Island. So we're missing that this year. We did a virtual walk, but I wish we could do it in person. So I'm here to talk today about a program that obviously I'm very excited about. So I came to Northwell Health about 1.5 years ago, and I am the Deputy Physician-in-Chief and the Director of Cancer Surgery for the health system. And coming from my prior experience being the head of pancreas and liver surgery in Baltimore, one of the first things we did is we wanted to develop a robust pancreas cancer program. And so I was very fortunate because I was also recruited at the same time that Dr. Wasif Saif came to Northwell as well. And we teamed up with the Lustgarten Foundation, and I think we've been able to do some really amazing things since we started. Our vision for pancreas cancer is that, as you said, we're the largest health system in the state of New York. We treat more cancer patients than any other health system in the state of New York. And our vision is that we want to provide a high quality, standardized way of treating pancreas cancer throughout our entire health system. And I think we've done a number of things to try to ensure that that's taking place. We have developed a system-wide pancreas cancer multidisciplinary clinic where patients can be seen, they can be evaluated by multiple providers, including surgeons, medical oncologists, radiation oncologists. We have a team of radiologists that specialize in pancreas cancer radiology. And we evaluate those patients in a system level, and then those patients are then come up with a treatment algorithm and a treatment pathway, basically in one clinic. These patients can be evaluated by a team of experts, but then they can also be seen locally. So they can be seen in the eastern region, they can be seen in the central region, they can be seen in the western region as well. But then they also get to benefit from having a team of experts come up with their plan of care. I think combining this with the work that we're doing with the Lustgarten Foundation and trying to kind of set up a lot of cutting edge clinical trials for our patients is going to be key over the next 5 to 10 years. All of our patients that are evaluated by this team of experts are also evaluated for potential clinical trials that they may be candidates for. I think we all know on this line that we have a lot of work to do with pancreatic cancer. And it's our vision in the Northwell Health Cancer Institute that every patient that comes through is not only going to get the best possible treatment for their pancreas cancer, but that they're going to be evaluated for potential clinical trials that I think really can make a difference in the future for these patients.
So one question we typically get a lot that I wanted to ask you are, what are some of the factors that could put a person at high risk for pancreatic cancer?
Well, so I like to tell patients that pancreatic cancer is probably one of 3 things. It's genetics, it's environmental, and then there's probably some good old-fashioned bad luck, but probably that bad luck is genetics and environmental exposures that we just haven't figured out yet. Number one, we know that patients that have a family history of pancreatic cancer, and familial pancreatic cancer is defined as 2 or more first-degree relatives that have had pancreas cancer. We know, for instance, that those patients are at increased risk of potentially developing pancreatic cancer. We also know that certain genetic abnormalities, certain familial predispositions can increase a risk of developing pancreatic cancer. And so actually one of the things that we've also done in the last 6 months is we've started a high-risk pancreatic cancer screening program where patients that are either at clinical high risk or at genetic high risk for potentially developing pancreatic cancer can be evaluated by our team of experts, and then we can map out a surveillance program for the future so that those patients can be screened over the coming years just in the off chance that they unfortunately develop pancreatic cancer.
So right now, everybody's big concerns are around COVID-19, the pandemic. But as we know, cancer does not take a break or take a back seat to anything. So, you know, there are a lot of our patients out there who have been diagnosed or recently diagnosed and you know, have been asking about Northwell Healthcare and how their pancreatic cancer patients are being treated during the COVID-19 pandemic. And, you know, for example, what kind of safety measures are being put in place for people who are undergoing surgeries or treatments during the pandemic?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. We obviously, being in New York City, we're kind of in the epicenter of COVID. And I think we very early on were and still are 100% committed to making sure that cancer patients aren't secondary victims of the COVID pandemic. Some of the things that we've done, I mean, I think safety starts from the preoperative time to even the postoperative time. So patients, we have lots of measures in place to make sure that patients are safe coming into our health system. We also do lots of things like limiting exposure to patients in the hospital. So we're utilizing a lot of telehealth visits. Even our multidisciplinary clinic now can be done via telehealth so that patients don't need to come into the hospital. We've also come up with, during the height of the pandemic, we came up with essentially a system-wide tumor board for pancreas cancer that was very thoughtful and methodical about thinking about the risks and benefits of patients either getting chemotherapy first or getting surgery first, and alternating sometimes our treatments based upon what the numbers were like in the city of New York. Now, fortunately, right now, New York State's in a good position with COVID numbers. We're all obviously very concerned that there could be a resurgence. But I can tell you that as someone who has been managing cancer surgery across this health system, we've had very, very good outcomes, and we've had essentially no negative outcomes related to COVID. You know, early on, we were very concerned that, you know, if our cancer patients unfortunately contracted COVID, what would that mean? We were worried about, could we be exposing patients to COVID while they were in the hospital or while they were getting chemotherapy or radiation therapy? We really made exhaustive measures to ensure that our patients were safe, that our staff was safe, universal testing. We really feel like at this point, and actually over the course of the last several months, that patients can be treated for their pancreatic cancer very, very safely.
Now, I know one question you probably get a lot, sometimes probably from our walkers, is that as a surgeon, how has the landscape of pancreatic cancer research changed just even within the last decade?
So pancreatic cancer has changed a lot. The treatment of pancreatic cancer has changed a lot in the last decade. Number one, systemic therapy has actually gotten better for pancreatic cancer. We have two major regimens that now are better in two ways. One, patients tolerate the chemotherapy better than they used to. And also the chemotherapeutic agents have better responses in the patient's tumors. And what that has actually led to is actually more surgical procedures occurring. So if you think about pancreatic cancer, up until now, really the only chance of cure of pancreatic cancer is with surgery. You know, chemotherapy is effective, radiation is effective, but there has been very, very few patients that have been cured unless they are able to have surgery at some point during their treatment. And what we have found is that as chemotherapy has gotten better and radiation therapy has gotten better, we're actually moving a lot of the patients that before were thought to not be able to undergo surgery now are actually able to undergo surgery. So if you look at all patients that develop pancreatic cancer, about 50% of them, unfortunately, will have metastatic disease at the time of diagnosis. Another 30% will have what we call locally advanced tumors or borderline resectable tumors, where the tumors are involving major blood vessels in the area that make removing them difficult, but they don't have metastatic disease. And actually, only about 20% of patients present from day one with tumors that can be removed or, quote, resectable. So I would say one of the major advances in the last 10 years has been the recognition that by giving upfront chemotherapy and radiation therapy, a large number of those 30% locally advanced or borderline resectable tumors are now actually able to undergo successful removal surgically. I have lots of patients that were told in the beginning that they had locally advanced unresectable tumors that got treated with chemotherapy, got treated with radiation, and then underwent removal of their tumor and were still cured of their disease.
Great, thank you. So I know a little bit earlier you had mentioned sort of the overlap when it came to the work that Lustgarten was doing along with Northwell, especially not only in providing clinical trials, but also driving patients to those clinical trials. So this question is really actually for both Dr. Weiss as well as Dr. Rakeman, because I'd like to get both of your perspectives on this. So why are collaborations like the one Northwell has with Lustgarten Foundation so important to moving the needle when it comes to this disease and changing survival outcomes? Dr. Weiss, did you want to take that one?
Sure, I can start. So I've had a great relationship with the Lustgarten Foundation and actually with the Cold Spring Harbor Lab and Dave Tuvison's lab for many years. Actually, a lot of the basic science and organoid work that Dr. Tuvison was working on was actually on specimens that I was removing at my prior institution. I think one of the key components that we should talk about today is the fact that I mentioned earlier that chemotherapy has gotten better. But one of the things that we're working together on is figuring out how do we actually tell if the chemotherapy is working. If you think about it today, if someone's diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, we have two main chemotherapeutic regimens that we can treat them with. We basically flip a coin to determine which regimen the patient's going to be started on. And then we use CT scans, MRIs, tumor markers to try to determine whether the patient's having a response to that chemotherapy or not. We need to develop better methods to determine not only whether patients are responding to chemotherapy, but also what chemotherapeutic agents we should be considering for them. So one of the projects that we've been working on together is the organoids that Dr. Tuvison's lab is working on at Cold Spring Harbor Lab. And what that is essentially trying to take a biopsy of the tumor in the beginning of the disease, growing that tumor in essentially a petri dish, and then testing different chemotherapeutic agents to determine what chemo that patient will respond to. It's really the epitome of precision medicine, trying to pick a therapy based upon the patient's individual tumor. So collaborations like this will enable us to have programs in the future where we can test different agents for a specific patient's tumor and then guide therapy in a true precision manner. So I think it's a very, very exciting time. The other thing, the other possible methods that we are trying to develop is also judging response to chemotherapy with things like circulating tumor cells. I think, you know, the next 3 to 5 years in pancreatic cancer, I think we're going to see a tremendous boom. And a lot of it is going to be on the ability to determine what therapies to give and also better define whether a patient is actually responding to therapy or not. Rather than just getting a CT scan and looking for the tumor to shrink or not, we want to have actual objective data that says, yes, this therapy is killing this tumor.
Yeah, no, I think it's very well said, Dr. Weiss. And I think, you know, one of the things from my point of view that's so important and exciting about the type of relationship that Lustgarten has with Northwell is it's two organizations that are really aligned on what is it that we want to achieve, right? And at Lustgarten, we talk a lot about research, and research is a real important thing that we do to get to our goal, but our goal ultimately is people are doing better with pancreatic cancer. They're getting diagnosed earlier, better treatment options available, surviving longer, being cured of pancreatic cancer. And that takes more than just research. It's awareness, it's raising funds, it's people out doing walks. And so having Northwell supporting Lustgarten in the walks and in our research, supporting with awareness, and with this community of patients and clinicians and such a large infrastructure, really understanding the strength and the power that they can bring back to advancing this mission. And Dr. Weiss talked a lot about, you know, some of that vision of how to assist in bringing research advances from the bench to the bedside, participating in clinical trials. And your colleague, Dr. Saif, who's part of our group that's really searching out what are the best clinical trials that we should be supporting next, helping to present those to the patients that you see so that they're able to understand and willing to participate in those studies. Bringing, and importantly, also going from the bedside back to the bench, taking the materials from the patients, as you were alluding to with the organoid research, and bringing that back to better understand what's happening with those patients, what's happening with those tumors. Why did people respond or not respond? I think equally important to take the research advances forward, we need to really understand when there's clinical successes and clinical failures, why they were, so that we can replicate those successes and avoid those failures in the future. And I think really to get to that goal of personalized medicine, as you said it several times now, Dr. Weiss, about having the right treatments for the right patients at the right times is really critical. And this kind of a relationship between the clinical side, the research side, and the foundation that sort of views the patient as the whole of that is really the kind of holy triumvirate to get things done.
Dr. Rakeman, let me ask you, you know, because Dr. Weiss sort of gave that time frame of 3 to 5 years. Outside of personalized medicine, you know, where do you see pancreatic cancer research heading in that same time frame?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one I wish I had the crystal ball on and wish I could know exactly where to be putting money and where to be moving forward. But I think, you know, if we use history as a guide here and see, well, what's been changing, what's been helping us to move forward, you know, and I think if we look at what have been the real challenges in pancreatic cancer that haven't let it benefit in the same way as other cancers have from some of the recent steps forward, is, you know, an incomplete understanding of the disease, how it forms, why it starts, that sort of bad luck black box that Dr. Weiss talked about, and sort of a lack of real understanding about why does the tumor respond in different ways than other cancers. And also this lack of understanding of why do some patients respond to some therapies that are available and others don't. And I think as we're able to chip away more and more through typical lab research from that bench to bedside and bedside back to bench type translational research, I think we're going to get a lot better understanding of the tumor biology that's going to guide both the development of new drugs as well as using drugs in more targeted ways, and a much better understanding about what types of therapies people are going to respond to, and hopefully keeping Dr. Weiss busier and busier doing more and more surgeries as more people become available to them. And I think, you know, all of that in the background of getting people diagnosed earlier. And I think that's one thing that everybody who's been touched by pancreatic cancer can understand is probably the first and biggest challenge is we see people often when it's too late. And if we saw them earlier, there'd be more treatment options available. We'd be able to do better. And it's a tough one to get at. One, understanding what are those risk factors and how can we track people who are at high risk better is going to help us a lot. But also having some better screens that are going to allow us to test people we might not have thought of traditionally as at risk and catch things even earlier before they start to cause any symptoms when it really is too late. So I think, to answer it more succinctly, I think we're going to get better at finding people earlier over the next few years and earlier detection. And we're going to get better and better at understanding the disease and new drugs that are going to really help us to focus in on those Achilles heels of pancreatic cancer, the really unique aspects of the tumors that we're going to be able to focus in on and do better treating them.
So I know typically as someone who works, with a lot of our supporters who are impacted by this disease, they're very interested in the science. And, typically we get a lot of questions around some of the research that Lustgarten is working on now. So I was wondering if you could spotlight, anything else for us, but also, we're now getting questions too about how COVID-19 is impacting the research world. If these projects are being put on hold, if they're going to have to progress more slowly. So I was wondering if you can comment on that.
Yeah, so that's a big question. So I'll start with the COVID side of things. And COVID, like how it's impacted everything in our lives, it's impacted how research is moving. And, I'm fortunate enough, I'm sitting here in my basement while my kids are making sure that they're paying attention to school next door. And I have that kind of flexibility to do this from everywhere. Not all kinds of work that happens, and certainly the patient care side of things has that level of flexibility. The one thing I'll say that I'm extraordinarily impressed with the pancreatic cancer research community and the clinical community is this is a group that signed up for a tough job, went in to work on a disease that's a tough one to research and a tough one to treat. And I think viewed COVID as just another challenge to overcome it and to get there. And, while it's been difficult of labs are partially open or people have to work in shifts, people are continuing to get work done. Probably the biggest impact had been on clinical research initially, where out of an appropriate abundance of caution, clinical research activities slowed down to say, let's minimize time that people are showing up in the clinic to try to make sure that we can do it as safely as possible. But as Dr. Weiss said earlier, a lot of those protocols on how to do clinical care and clinical research safely have been developed and have been overcome. And now we're seeing clinical trials starting to recruit again and new trials starting up again and some real exciting trials getting launched now. So they're being overcome. And I think that's really a testament to the resiliency of this research committee that's used to working under challenging circumstances and rolled with this the same as they do any other challenge. In terms of what kind of research is exciting right now and what's important, I think we've already touched on all of these things, but at a basic level, what we need to do in pancreatic cancer is find people earlier. We need to get better drugs to treat them more effectively and safer. And we need to know how to use those drugs better so we get the right drugs to the right patient at the right time. And, I think in terms of what's exciting right now, what's most exciting to me is I think across all of those three big pillars, we're making incredible progress where we're not just in the concept phase anymore. We're not just testing things out in mice or in petri dishes, but across all those areas, projects are progressing to where they're being tested in people, in the clinic, and really understanding what impact they're going to have on people affected by pancreatic cancer. So, on the side of early detection, we've seen news coming out this year around a screening test that's been developed with Lustgarten funding called CancerSeek. It's been picked up by a company and has been through its first round of clinical testing for early detection of a whole panel of cancers, including pancreatic cancer. And that's pressing ahead with some success there. Additionally, there's other approaches to that, including automated reading of images that can detect pancreatic cancer in a computer rather than relying on a radiologist to be looking for pancreatic cancer, as well as all of the other things that they're looking at when in images that were taken for other reasons. There's a Felix program run out of Johns Hopkins that's had some great success. In terms of new drugs, we're seeing new clinical trials starting up all the time. One of the ones that's quite exciting coming out of Lustgarten funded research from Cold Spring Harbor, looking at why is it that some of these new immune drugs that are supposed to be able to stimulate our own immune system to kill tumors, why don't they work so well in pancreatic cancer? And settle down on this existing drug that can remove one of the signals that pushes the immune system out of the tumor in pancreatic cancer. So this study is now just getting set to launch, funded by Lustgarten and Stand Up to Cancer in collaboration, using a drug called plerixafor in combination with these immune checkpoint inhibitors to see if that'll go forward. Additionally, I mentioned before with working with Dr. Saif from Northwell and a whole panel of clinical experts, Lustgarten now has a team called the Translational Advisory Group led by Liz Jaffe from Johns Hopkins that's searching out for more and more clinical opportunities to move faster from the bench to the bedside, into those first clinical trials. And finally, on personalized medicine, as Dr. Weiss already mentioned, the use of organoids to guide treatment is something that really has the potential to be transformative and is now just getting set to be tested in the first clinical study, where it's going to be used to help predict retrospectively which patients would have responded better to which chemotherapeutic used as first line. That's again an extremely exciting study that could change, the way we make those early clinical decisions on how patients are treated. So I think a lot of progress going on, a lot of excitement, but if I had to sum it all up, it's because across the board in all those areas, there's more work to do, but we're starting to test everything in people with the disease and really understand what the true impact could be with these new approaches.
It's a lot of great work going on. Dr. Weiss, I'm going to have the final question for you. It was originally for Dr. Rakeman, but I think he answered it. But from your perspective as a surgeon, which of these projects are you excited to see progress?
So I think twofold. I guess that's copping out, but I'm going to say two of them. Number one, I think early detection is always the holy grail, right? If you look at most of the improvements that we've had in any cancer care over the last 25 to 30 years, the vast majority of improvements have been early detection. So early detection is going to be key for this disease. And then I think true precision medicine. And I tell the story, when I was a fellow, I remember removing a 12-centimeter pancreas cancer that had no metastases. It was 12 centimeters. That's a big tumor. And I thought to myself, this patient has a 12-centimeter tumor and no metastases. But the patient I operated on yesterday had about a 0.9-centimeter tumor, and they had metastases in their liver. Those are clearly not the same pancreas cancers. Those are different pancreas cancers. And, we like to say that that not all pancreas cancers are the same. I would go a step further. I would say that no two pancreas cancers are the same genetically. And that's why we've had so many problems treating these pancreas cancers, because up until now, we've treated all of them the same way. We've treated all of them with the same drugs, and they're different tumors. So the idea that we could guide our therapy and actually pick a drug based upon an individual patient's tumor and their individual patient's tumor's genetics is going to be absolutely groundbreaking. And I think we're just at the beginning of making that a real possibility. And I think once we can do that in the near future, the sky is the limit in my field, in terms of surgery, because surgery is local control of disease. Pancreas cancer, we need systemic control. That's the most important thing. If we can get drugs and we can target our drugs to get systemic disease under control, then the surgeons will take care of the local disease. So I think both of those are probably the most exciting areas in the near future.
Great, thank you. So I believe both of you have answered pretty much all of my questions. I just wanted to see if there was any final thoughts before we wrap things up and let you guys get back to doing what you do best. Dr. Rakeman?
My only final thoughts would be to thank everybody who's watching and thank everybody who's coming out to participate in the walks, because all of what you've heard about and all of what the advances that you see start with the folks who start out raising the money, raising the awareness, and coming with that passion. And that's a passion I know I bring with me to work. Dr. Weiss, I'm sure, is the same, and it really comes from and starts from all of you. So my last word will be a hearty thank you to all of the folks listening out there for all the hard work that you do to make this become a reality.
I would echo that. I would thank everyone for their support. I would assure them that we are doing everything we can to make advances against what is truly a terrible disease. We see it every day, and we are doing everything we can to push this needle further. You know, if you think about it, pancreatic cancer very soon will be the third leading cause of cancer death in our country. And the only way we're going to beat that is through collaborations like this with the Lustgarten Foundation and doing research and bringing that research to the bedside so that we can improve our patients' outcomes, because that's what we're all in this for. So thank you.
Well, and again, I want to thank you both as well too. You know, Dr. Weiss, I know you typically are at the walks, and I'm sure you get a lot of some of our walkers and supporters coming up and thanking you. And so on behalf of our constituents that are going to be participating in this year's virtual walk, thank you and Northwell for all of your support. And you know, we hope to be able to gather again in person real soon, but we'll all be together in spirit on October 4th, walking in our neighborhoods to continue to raise funds and awareness for pancreatic cancer research. And once again, for anybody who is interested in joining us, we have our website up for registration. It's lustgarten.org/Long Island Walk. And of course, if you have any further interest in seeing what's going on over at Northwell, it's northwell.edu. And again, yeah, I'd like to thank both Dr. Rakeman and Dr. Weiss for joining us here today. Getting these sort of insights are really invaluable, and I know our constituents and supporters really do appreciate hearing firsthand from both of you where their donor dollars are going. Because as Dr. Rakeman said, you know, we wouldn't really be able to do this kind of work without their support. So we want to make sure they know what they're investing in. So with that, I want to thank everybody who spent the time to join us today. And we look forward to seeing you on our virtual walk online on October 4th. And if you have any questions, again, my name is Jason Rice. I'm the Director of Development here at Lustgarten Foundation. Please reach out at jrice@lustgarten.org. And thank you again.